The ashwagandha disaster. Why this natural supplement is tanking your hormones cold open, and by the time they figured out what was happening, his thyroid was barely functioning. 8 weeks. That's all it took. 8 weeks of taking the most recommended, natural, testosterone booster on the entire internet, and this 28-year-old guy went from crushing it in the gym to feeling nothing. Not tired, not sad, just empty. His doctor ran every test imaginable. Depression screening, hormone panels, thyroid function. And that's when they found it. His TSH levels were completely suppressed. His free T3 was tanking. And the culprit? The same supplement sitting in your cabinet right now. The one with 5-star reviews. The one every fitness influencer swears by. The one that's supposed to lower cortisol, boost testosterone, and help you sleep like a baby. Ashwagandha, the so-called ancient adaptogen that the supplement industry tells you is completely safe because it's natural. Here's what they're not telling you. There is a growing wave of case reports, clinical observations, and suppressed data showing that chronic ashwagandha use is causing thyroid dysfunction, emotional blunting, and hormonal chaos that takes months, sometimes longer, to reverse. And the fitness industry? They're still pushing it like candy. Welcome back to the Real Bio Protocol, ACT1. The problem. Let's talk about how we got here. Because ashwagandha didn't become the most popular supplement in the fitness industry by accident. It was engineered to be everywhere. Open any testosterone booster. Check the label on any adrenal support formula. Look at the ingredient list of any nootropic stack marketed to stressed-out entrepreneurs. What's always there? Withania somnifera, ashwagandha, usually standardized duethanoids, sometimes KSM66, sometimes sensoril, sometimes generic root powder. But always present, always front and center. The marketing pitch is beautiful. Ancient Ayurvedic herb, thousands of years of traditional use. Clinically proven to reduce cortisol. Shown to increase testosterone in stressed men. Helps with anxiety. Improves sleep. Builds muscle. Burns fat. The perfect natural compound. And the studies they cite? They're real. A 2019 study published in the American Journal of Men's Health showed that 8 weeks of ashwagandha supplementation increased testosterone by nearly 15% in overweight men. Another study in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found improvements in muscle strength and recovery. The cortisol reduction data is legitimate. Multiple trials showed 20 to 30% decreases in serum cortisol. So what's the problem? The problem is that nobody is talking about what happens when you take this stuff chronically. Nobody is discussing the mechanism by which ashwagandha actually works. And nobody, absolutely nobody in the supplement industry, wants you to know that this natural herb is one of the most potent thyroid-stimulating compounds you can buy without a prescription. Here's the reality that gets buried in the marketing. Ashwagandha doesn't just reduce stress. It directly stimulates thyroid hormone production. It increases T4 to T3 conversion. It acts on the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis in ways that most supplement users don't understand and most supplement companies don't disclose. And when you artificially stimulate any hormonal axis for weeks or months on end, your body adapts. Your feedback loops recalibrate. Your baseline shifts. And when you stop taking the compound, that's when the crash comes. The forums are filling up with these stories. Reddit threads with hundreds of comments. Guys who took ashwagandha for stress and ended up emotionally flatlined. Women who used it for anxiety and developed thyroid antibodies. Athletes who cycled it for performance and couldn't recover their natural hormone production for months. But you won't hear about this from the supplement companies. You won't see it in the sponsored studies. Because ashwagandha is a multi-billion-dollar ingredient, and admitting it has serious risks would collapse an entire market segment. ACT2. The hidden truth. Let's look at the data they don't want featured in the marketing materials. In 2022, the journal Koreas published a case report titled, Ashwagandha-Induced Thyrotoxicosis. A 52-year-old woman with no history of thyroid disease developed hyperthyroidism after taking ashwagandha for anxiety. Her free T4 was elevated. Her TSH was suppressed. Her symptoms resolved only after discontinuing the supplement. The authors concluded that ashwagandha has significant thyroid-stimulating properties that warrant caution. This wasn't a one-off. In 2023, BMJ Case Reports documented another case, a 34-year-old man who developed thyrotoxicosis after just 6 weeks of ashwagandha use. His labs showed suppressed TSH, elevated T4, and clinical symptoms of hyperthyroidism including rapid heart rate, anxiety, and tremors. Again, resolution only occurred after stopping the supplement. But here's what's really disturbing. These case reports are appearing with increasing frequency, yet the supplement industry continues to market ashwagandha as universally safe. A 2014 study in the Journal of Alternative and Complementary Medicine tested ashwagandha root extract on patients with subclinical hypothyroidism. After 8 weeks, their TSH levels dropped significantly while T3 and T4 increased. The study was framed positively. Look, it supports thyroid function. What they didn't emphasize is what this means for people with normal thyroid function. You're artificially pushing your thyroid into overdrive. Now let's talk about the emotional blunting, because this is the side effect nobody warned you about. Ashwagandha is GABAergic. It modulates GABA receptors in the brain. This is part of why it reduces anxiety. But chronic GABA modulation leads to downregulation. Your brain adapts. It becomes less sensitive to GABA signaling. And GABA isn't just about anxiety, it's intimately involved in emotional processing, motivation, and reward. Users report this constantly. 6 weeks into ashwagandha use, and they feel numb. Not calm. Not relaxed. Numb. Music doesn't hit the same. Relationships feel distant. The gym becomes a chore. Some describe it as feeling like they're watching their life through a window rather than living it. A 2021 paper in Psychoneuroendocrinology examined the relationship between cortisol levels and emotional processing. What they found was that moderate cortisol is actually necessary for emotional salience. When you chronically suppress cortisol below optimal levels, you don't just reduce stress, you reduce your ability to feel anything intensely. Ashwagandha doesn't just lower cortisol when it's high. For many users, it suppresses cortisol below healthy baseline levels. And the research shows that hypocortisolism is just as problematic as hypercortisolism. Fatigue, cognitive fog, anhedonia, flattened effect. These are all documented symptoms of chronically low cortisol. So why isn't this being discussed? Because it takes months to develop. And by the time users connect their emotional numbness to their natural stress supplement, they've already been taking it for so long that they've forgotten what baseline feels like. ACT3. The mechanism. Let's get into the biology. Because once you understand how ashwagandha works, you'll understand why chronic use is playing Russian roulette with your endocrine system. Ashwagandha contains several bioactive compounds, but the primary ones are withanolides, specifically withaferin A and withanolide D. These compounds have been shown to interact with multiple biological pathways, but the ones that matter most for this discussion are the hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis and the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis. Let's start with thyroid. Your thyroid gland produces two main hormones, T4, thyroxine, and T3, triiodothyronine. T4 is the storage form, T3 is the active form. The conversion of T4 to T3 happens primarily in peripheral tissues through enzymes called deiodinases. Ashwagandha has been shown to increase deiodinase activity. This means it accelerates the conversion of T4 to T3. In the short term, this creates a feeling of increased energy and metabolism. But your body's feedback systems aren't designed for external manipulation. When free T3 levels rise, your pituitary gland detects this and reduces TSH output. TSH is the signal that tells your thyroid to produce more hormone. With chronically elevated T3 from ashwagandha-enhanced conversion, your TSH stays suppressed. And a suppressed TSH means your thyroid gland itself starts to downregulate. This is the trap. While you're taking ashwagandha, you feel fine, maybe even great, because you have adequate circulating T3. But your thyroid gland is essentially on vacation. It's not being stimulated to produce hormones because the feedback loop thinks everything is handled. Then you stop taking ashwagandha. Suddenly, the enhanced T4 to T3 conversion disappears. But your thyroid is still downregulated. Your TSH is still sluggish. And you crash into a hypothyroid state that can take weeks or months to recover from. This is exactly what the case reports describe. Users who felt great on ashwagandha, stopped taking it, and then experienced crushing fatigue, brain fog, weight gain, and depression. Their doctors run thyroid panels and find suppressed TSH with low T3 and T4. The textbook picture of central hypothyroidism, caused by an herb marketed as completely safe. Now let's talk about the adrenal axis. Ashwagandha inhibits cortisol synthesis by modulating HPA axis signaling. Specifically, it appears to reduce the sensitivity of the adrenal cortex to ACTH, the hormone that tells your adrenals to produce cortisol. Again, short-term, this seems beneficial. Less cortisol means less stress, better sleep, more recovery. But cortisol isn't just a stress hormone. It's a survival hormone. It regulates immune function, blood sugar, inflammation, and arousal. Your body produces cortisol in a circadian rhythm for a reason. When you chronically suppress cortisol production, your adrenal glands can actually atrophy. The zona fasciculata, the layer of the adrenal cortex that produces cortisol, becomes less active, less responsive. And when you need cortisol, when you're sick, when you're training hard, when you're under real stress, your adrenals can't deliver. This creates a secondary problem. Compensatory mechanisms kick in. When cortisol drops too low, your body may increase norepinephrine and epinephrine to maintain arousal. This creates a paradoxical state where you feel both exhausted and wired. Users describe it as being tired but can't sleep. That's the signature of adrenal dysfunction masked by catecholamine compensation. ACT4, real-world application. So what do you actually do with this information? Because you might be taking ashwagandha right now. Or you might have just stopped. Or you might be dealing with the aftermath already. First, let's be clear. Not everyone will experience these side effects. Individual responses vary based on genetics, baseline thyroid function, dosage, duration of use, and other factors. But the fact that significant adverse effects are possible, and are appearing in clinical literature with increasing frequency, means you need to approach this compound with respect, not blind trust. If you're currently taking ashwagandha and feeling fine, here's the protocol: cycle it. Do not take it continuously for months on end. The studies showing benefits typically use 8 to 12-week interventions. There's no long-term safety data on chronic use because the studies literally don't exist. A reasonable approach is 8 weeks on, 4 weeks off. During the off period, monitor how you feel. Are you crashing? Do you feel emotionally flat? Is your energy tanking? These are signs that your body has become dependent on the compound for normal hormonal function. If you're planning to start ashwagandha, get baseline labs first. TSH, free T4, free T3, and if possible, thyroid antibodies. This gives you a reference point. After 6 to 8 weeks of use, repeat the labs. If your TSH is dropping significantly or your T3 is spiking, you're seeing evidence of thyroid axis manipulation. If you've already stopped ashwagandha and you're experiencing symptoms, fatigue, brain fog, emotional numbness, weight gain, don't panic. Your body can recover, but it takes time. Support your thyroid with adequate iodine, selenium, and zinc. Make sure you're getting enough dietary fat, because cholesterol is the precursor to all steroid hormones. Prioritize sleep, because that's when your endocrine system does most of its recalibration. Some users have found that low-dose thyroid support, either through desiccated thyroid or prescription T4, T3, can accelerate recovery. This requires working with a knowledgeable physician who understands the mechanism of ashwagandha-induced thyroid suppression. Most mainstream doctors won't connect the dots, so you may need to seek out a functional medicine practitioner. For the emotional blunting, time is the primary healer. GABA receptor sensitivity will normalize, but it can take weeks to months. Avoid other GABAergic compounds during recovery. That means no phenibut, no excessive alcohol, no high-dose magnesium threonate. You want your GABA system to recalibrate without further modulation. Finally, and this is crucial, stop trusting supplements just because they're natural. Arsenic is natural. Hemlock is natural. The origin of a compound tells you nothing about its safety profile. What matters is mechanism, dose, duration, and individual response. Ashwagandha is a powerful herb that manipulates fundamental hormonal axes. Treat it with the same respect you would give a pharmaceutical compound. ACT5. The bigger picture. Here's the question you should be asking. Why don't you know this already? Ashwagandha has been on the market for decades. It's been studied extensively. The thyroid-stimulating effects are documented in peer-reviewed literature. The case reports of thyrotoxicosis are being published in medical journals. The emotional blunting is reported constantly by users. So why is this compound still marketed as universally safe? Follow the money. Ashwagandha is one of the most profitable ingredients in the supplement industry. It's in testosterone boosters, stress formulas, sleep supplements, nootropic stacks, and greens powders. Entire brands are built around it. Influencers are paid to promote it. The industry has a massive financial incentive to suppress information about adverse effects. But there's something deeper going on. We've been conditioned to believe that natural means safe. That if something comes from a plant, it can't hurt us. This is a deliberate narrative constructed by an industry that profits from your ignorance. They don't want you asking questions. They don't want you looking at mechanisms. They want you to seek clinically studied and ancient wisdom and turn off your critical thinking. Your hormonal health is not a game. Your thyroid regulates your metabolism, your mood, your cognitive function, your body composition. Your adrenals govern your stress response, your energy, your resilience. These systems took millions of years to evolve, and they operate on delicate feedback loops that weren't designed for daily manipulation by concentrated plant extracts. You deserve to know what you're putting in your body. You deserve access to the full picture, the benefits and the risks. You deserve to make informed decisions about your health, not decisions based on marketing copy and sponsored studies. The science is out there. They just don't want you finding it. That's why we're here. This is the Real Bio Protocol.